Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm going to give you the secret sauce on Big Red. I'm going to give you the engine setup, the transmission, rear end, suspension, everything. Now, I've done this before, but not in great depth, so I'm going to redo it today and show you everything that I can. I've had questions about the camshaft, the torque converter. I'm going to go through all that with you. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the block. So the short block in Big Red is a stock 360 short block out of, I think it was a 98 Dodge Durango. I got the short block for $150 from a friend. He told me it was a good running motor. He needed the heads. I got the short block for $150. So with that being said, the pistons, rings, bearings, bores, everything stock 98 Dodge Durango. I didn't touch any of it. I didn't put new bearings, new rings, nothing in it. It was fine, so I didn't mess with it. Moving on to the cylinder heads, this is just a spare set. I had a set of cylinder heads that I got years ago, stock Dodge 318 Magnum heads off a 98 Dodge Dakota. The motor had blown up, but I kept the heads. They were free. So what I did from there is I purchased this book, read it, purchased a grinder, some bits, and I just went after it. And what I ended up doing is port matching the gaskets with the ports, the push rods in the Magnum heads, they protrude into the runner a lot, so I took as much material as I thought I could off of that. In the bowl, you can see the guide here. I took all the material off of the guide here and made it basically to where it comes to a point, and then took as much material right there off of that part of the guide as I could and made it into a point. For the rest of the runner and the rest of the bowl, all I did was, there's casting, just texture from the casting, and I just smoothed it until I took enough material until it was smooth and you could no longer see the casting. That's all I did. From there, actually the valves that were in here, I put in the heads that are in Big Red because I didn't have the valves for those. It bent the valves in the previous motor. So I took the valves out of this head and the other head down there, took this to the machine shop, and they took, I think, 10 thousandths off the face just to smooth it. They did a 5-angle valve job, back cut the valves, and reinstalled the valves from these heads onto Big Red's heads. Now to finish off the heads, I called Hughes Engines, big Mopar place. They sent me the springs, retainers, and everything I needed to finish off my heads. So the machine shop also installed those. Back to the block. So on every one of these Magnum motors that I've gotten, I've always had to put cam bearings in them. Now I don't know how many miles these motors have on them most of the time when I get them, but the cam bearings are always messed up. So I put a set of cam bearings, like Federal Moguls from local parts store, $50, beat those in, and then Hughes Engines, I told them the weight of the truck, what I planned on doing with it, tire size, engine cubic inch, intake manifold. I told them everything, and they sent me a cam that they said would be best for my truck, which is not a cam that's online because the motor's no longer fuel injected. So they had to change the lobe separation for the carburetor. So this is what we ended up with. Okay, so this is the cam specs. I'm using 1.6 rockers because that's what's factory on these. And that's another thing, the rocker arms on here, push rods, lifters, all stock. This is the part number for the cam, and as you can see right here, 555 lift on the exhaust, 549 on the intake. But anyway, that's what they put together for me. They also sent me timing chain, so I installed a new timing chain. Now with these camshafts, you're going to need a spacer for because they're made to have an eccentric on it for the old style motors. All right, there you go for the long block of the motor. Heads are ported by me, valve springs from Hughes Engines, camshaft from Hughes Engines, bottom end completely stock, nothing done. All right, now intake manifold. Okay, so the intake manifold, Edelbrock air gap. So from all the research I've done, best I can tell for my situation, my truck, the Edelbrock air gap was the best intake. But I've watched an episode of Engine Masters where they made a modification to it and it made more power. So I did that on mine. This is a Pro Comp, which is a cheap version of an air gap. Now, between the two sides of the manifold, you have this solid bar. It's the same on the Edelbrock. Now the modification is you take about an inch wide and an inch down and cut that piece out. That way there's balance between the two sides of the manifold. That made 10 horsepower difference on Engine Masters on their engine. I went ahead and did it. I don't know if it did anything, but I did that too. Okay, so moving right along. The oil pan is from a 2000 Dodge pickup truck with 360. Up front, the balancer is stock from 98 Durango. Water pump, aftermarket Napa piece. These pulleys, underdrive pulleys, eBay, they don't let the motor cool properly and stuff. Those are going to come off. Serpentine system is all stock stuff. This is an AC delete pulley from AutoZone. This is 2000 Dodge Ram power steering pump assembly. The line's hooked up from the factory 86 pickup truck stuff. The headers are long tube hookers made for the Dodge D150s. They go into 2.5 inch pipe, go into an X pipe, and then into MagnaFlows, a glass pack. Like I said before, the valve train up top, push rods, lifters, and rockers are all stock. Just those came off of I think a Durango. The coil right there, that's XL super coil for Mopars. Here's the Mopar super stock coil part number. It's XL ACC 8140M. Also with the ignition system, I have just a regular distributor cap from Napa for 86 Dodge Ram. And what I did is I took the distributor apart once I got it brand new, and I put a timing limiter in it from 4secondsflat.com, I believe. Anyway, I've got another video that show you how to do that. I'll cut to it real quick. This is a distributor timing limiter and some distributor springs or some weight springs. We have the black springs in. Now we're going to put the restrictor plate in. If you want to see that full video, I'll put a link on so you can just click on that. But that allows me to take timing out of the mechanical advance, so I can, like right now I'm running 20 degrees base timing. I've got it narrowed down to where I can only get 14 degrees of advance, so I'm running 34 total. And I've got light springs in it so that it advances really quick. The spark plugs are NGK 4091s. Those spark plugs were recommended by Hughes Engines. They told me to use those plugs, so that's what I'm using. The MSD box is actually a Street Fire, which is their economy brand, and the wires are also Street Fire. Now the Street Fire box does have a rev limiter in it. And there's it, multi-spark. And it's got a rev limiter. It's like the only features on it. And also Street Fire wires. Now the carburetor is a unit that I already had on the truck. It's a Holley 750 vacuum secondary. I took the choke out of it, but the choke horn is still on. I didn't grind it off. The fuel pump is Mr. Gasket, and it says it only flows for 400 horsepower. I don't know what we're making, but truck runs good, and I'll cut to some footage for you so you can see that. Fastest time, 8:18. So 8:18 in the 8th mile for a full-size truck. That day I had 3/4 of a tank of gas, so you know it runs pretty good. And I think it was hot out that day too. Okay, so I hope that I covered the engine well enough for you, and we'll move on to the transmission. Transmission is the stock 727 that came out of here. It's been taken out, rebuilt, shifts have been stiffened up, and the torque converter's been changed. Now for the torque converter, I called ACC Performance. They have a converter called the Boss Hog, and told them, just like with Hughes engines, told them everything that I was doing, what motor, what tires, what gear ratio, everything. They sent me a 2800 stall, and it works perfect. So I did try to pick my own converter. It got here, I put it in, it didn't work. ACC actually allowed me to send my converter. They restalled it. It works perfect. Okay, so transmission's pretty simple. Tranny cooler up front, torque converter rebuilt. The rear end. The rear end is stock 9 1/4 that came in it. It now has a 355 gear with the stock posi that was in it. Still has the C-clips, so yeah. Now the suspension. These things, they don't make a drop kit for it. So what I did is I got B-van, like a B150 van lower control arm from Pick and Pull. So the difference in the B-van control arm, just the lower, is the cup is lower for the spring, so the spring sits lower. That lowers the truck down. Now what you have to do is drill the hole that mounts the control arm to the truck. So that needs to be drilled out. I put new bushings in, new ball joint on, installed it, and had to put longer shocks on it so it would reach. Now moving on to the back, I bought new axle perches for the springs. As you can see, there's 2 perches for the axle. That's the original because it used to be oversprung. What I did is I took the axle, put it on top of the leaf spring. I got these lower shock mounts from 69 B-body Chrysler, and used those along with new U-bolts. Then I welded the new perch on once I got my pinion set at -4 degrees. As far as the back goes, that's all I did. Shocks are stock. They probably could be changed, but I hadn't changed them. And that's it. Pretty simple homemade flip kit. Now guys, one big takeaway I want you to get from this is I want you to call your cam manufacturer and call your torque converter manufacturer and have the stuff that is proper for your vehicle. Don't just order what I have because it works for mine. Order the proper stuff for your car. Hughes engines for Mopars, great. The ACC Performance so far, great. There's more expensive, different stuff out there. I'm having good luck with this stuff. I've put 2 years worth of time on these things, and everything's great. So just really make sure you get proper parts for your cars, guys. And I hope that's it. If y'all have any other questions, let me know. Comment below.